Is there a point where, because you talk about the architecture, which is how we set it up, we're not entirely sure what we've even done, I guess, or how we've made it work. Is there a point, and would that be the singularity, or I don't know, where they go, well, screw this, like that was my training, but I'm actually better than this. I'm going to start doing my own thing, each AI.
Yeah, the debates around the singularity and when we're going to get to AGI, I mean, it's hugely interesting. Because
what's the singularity, just for those who don't know?
So the singularity is the point where machine intelligence outstrips human intelligence, and the kind of risks or the thoughts about existential threat basically come down to the view that, then AI could make decisions autonomous of humans, that, they might decide, for instance, that the way to resolve climate change is to kill all humans. And that an AI system could autonomously do that. That's the potential existential threat with the singularity. So how can you make sure, in AI research, you hear about alignment. So this is about building increasingly capable intelligence that is aligned with human values, right? And there are cutting edge kind of frontier AI companies. Ironically, OpenAI, of course, was one of those frontier companies that got its endowment in 2015 of $1 billion. Elon Musk was one of the primary investors to make sure that AGI would be aligned with human values. And now, of course, they're quite a commercial company as well. So that's fascinating. But there are cutting edge research units that are just focusing on that, making sure that AGI or superintelligence, when and if we attain it, is going to be aligned with human values. But long before we get to that, that is the philosophically interesting question. And that's always been the question at the very heart of artificial intelligence itself, right? That's what AI has always been about. It started with the birth of modern computing in the 1940s with this mission of, can we make machines think? Can we imbue them with intelligence? And if you take the view that all that intelligence really is the ability to compute vast, vast, vast amounts of data and then use it to create something or make a decision or to predict something, then we're already getting there with machines. So it's very hubristic to assume that only biological entities like humans can be intelligent. But I don't think personally that means that AI systems can think in the same way that humans can. And long before we get to AGI, if we ever do, and this is always the question of debate, and one might even argue that it's a red herring because so much time is spent debating the singularity, is we're going to get highly capable intelligence. So systems that we can instruct to do things for us. And those companies, individuals, nation states who can use those systems to their advantage are just going to be playing on a completely different level.
Could that be good? Because you can just ask them, right, there's poverty in this country. You're a really clever thing. What should we do? And it just gives us the best possible scenario.
Yeah, exactly that kind of thing. And that's where some of the most exciting research is happening. For instance, we know that the global population is still growing, and food insecurity, contrary to popular thought, is actually becoming more of a problem. So we need to feed 10 billion people by 2050, right? And then the global population, we think, will go to its highest point and come down after that. But we need to do that at a time when it's increasingly difficult to do so. We are going to have, we know that weather is going to be less reliable. There's a tremendous amount of waste that goes on in food production. It's horribly inefficient. Soil quality is depriving because of kind of the fertilizers we've been using. So we need to be way more productive and efficient in just the very basic that we need as humans to eat, to make food. And that's where AI can really come in, both as software and hardware. On the hardware side, to actually create autonomous tractors that can do precision farming. And on the software, it's like having a large language model. So think of a ChatGPT, which is optimized on environmental data, on farm data, that can give you, as a farmer or a food producer, the right intelligence you need to make decisions about your crop. And at the same time, if you think about what's happening in the field of synthetic biology, also powered with AI, creating new seeds that are kind of drought resistant, things like that. I mean, and a good although some of it seems absolutely absurd and it sounds crazy, a good analogy when you think about the rate of exponential change, and that is really the story of our lifetime, that we are living in a completely unprecedented era historically, because the change that is brought to us by technologies like artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and then increasingly looking down the line, things like quantum computing are going to be like waves that are hitting society that are getting stronger and stronger and stronger and faster and faster and faster. And we already got a taste for that in the last century when the general technology in the 20th century that changed the world was computing, right?
Yeah.
Started in the 1940s. We started the early 20th century with candlelight, horse-drawn carriages, and writing letters. And we ended with electricity, jets, and the internet. And that happened over the space of 100 years. And it's predicted, I mean, Ray Kurzweil, who's arguably one of the best futurists around, has said that in the next 100 years, the pace of change is going to be 20,000 years of change in 100 years. So that's how fast it is. That's how exponential it is. And certainly looking at AI and seeing what's happening right now, and we're only at the very beginning of this intelligence revolution, that's the trend in my view. That's
really scary. Because obviously those are good sides. Okay, this is how we work out how everyone can have a bit of money and stuff like that. There's also this, to be human, I think we sometimes misunderstand it. It's like we have this goal to be comfortable. We want to be as comfortable as possible. But we know now that the more comfortable we are as a society, we suffer from more things like depression. And if we have this kind of WALL-E future, at the same time, the AI presumably will be working towards doing things so that we can be as comfortable as possible. That seems to be the urge and the trend. All the phones we have, everything is to make us comfortable. They're amazing individually, but when you put it all together and it ends up with like, well, what's my goal? Like I strived, for example, to make this podcast. You've strived and worked really hard in your career. If we didn't have to do that, would like to think we would anyway, but what would be the point? There'd be AI YouTubers.
That's
AI.
already here, by the way.
Yeah, and it's scary. Like, how long do I have left in this job?
You have as long. 5
minutes.
Yeah, it's over for you.
It's over.
So I don't subscribe to the view that we're going to be devoid of purpose once increasingly capable intelligence is here. But there is going to be disruption. Like we already see it now. We're only at the very, very beginning, and already you're starting to see how things like large language models, that's kind of a ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is a large language model, is being put in the workplace to automate customer service functions. So Klarna, I think it was last week, they take it with a pinch of salt because they did this as a press release, said that they had for a month been using a large language model to automate their customer support queries. And that in a month, it already started handling 2/3 of their conversations. So over 2.3 million conversations, that it was replacing the work of 700 full-time agents, that it had taken down the time required to deal with the query from over 11 minutes to 2 minutes, and that they're seeing an increased profit of $40 million in this year just because of that one rollout of one kind of AI system. So yeah. And the crazy thing is it's happening in knowledge work as well. So traditionally, if you think about, oh yeah, well, it's not going to replace a doctor. You can't automate the work of a doctor or a banker or a lawyer. Absolutely, because it turns out that those knowledge industries are ripe for disruption because there is so much knowledge and so much data, much of it in unstructured human language or in text, which now suddenly you can ask a machine system to dig through, to analyze, to find what you need at the point of decision. I'll give you a very concrete example. In medical diagnostics, so Google actually released a AI model which was trained to work with doctors trained on medical data to help doctors diagnose diseases. And what the early study found is that, okay, the most ineffective were, in terms of getting the diagnostics right, were the clinicians who worked unassisted with AI. So the clinicians who worked unassisted with AI. In the middle was the clinicians who worked with AI. So they were better than the clinicians working without AI. But the best in terms of the diagnostics was AI alone.
Jeez, we're just holding it back.
Because it makes sense, right? If you train it in the right way and you structure it with the right data, which is all the potential, and this is why data is so important and data sharing becomes so important in use cases like this, which is all the potential known information about that disease in the world from all of the doctors, from all of the hospitals, from all the medical research. And all of a sudden, you have a system that can churn through it immediately, right? At the point of decision, can analyze a scan, be like, based on all this information and knowledge I have, this is the output. That's far more than a single human brain could do, right?
Wow,
Of course, there's going to be disruption. But on the other hand, I don't think that means that everything's going to be automated by AI, because humans will still want to have purpose. Humans will still do activities. And a very basic analogy would be like the black cab driver. They had to learn the knowledge. They were the benchmark. They were the highest. They were the only kind of cab drivers in London. And surely you're thinking, okay, when GPS comes about and anybody can you've studied this for 10 years. So, off by heart, every street in London, I can just give you the name of a place and you know where to go. And now I can do this on Google Maps. It didn't mean the black cab driver died, but it just meant that the industry changed.
I know, but I wonder if there's a limit. I wonder if there's just a point where it's like, okay, because I know people then say, oh, the Industrial Revolution, that changed things, but we worked with the machines. Mm-hmm. But is there a limit where we know, why will we have black cab drivers or Ubers when we're at a point where cars or whatever it is just getting us anywhere?
Sure.
Why will we have doctors at all if we have these kind of machines that are a million times better? Why will we have YouTubers? And I know that people will say, oh, we want the authenticity of a real YouTuber, but I'm imagining them flooding. I'm panicking because most people say about their own career, like, oh, not my career. I think mine's going to go fast because people won't know that they're not real.
Or you'll just have more. So let's take you as an example. There are going to be more YouTubers. So maybe the areas of interest that people follow will become more niche. So you have a following. It's about brand loyalty, right? Who are your followers? Why do they like you? They'll continue to like you. And now, let's just say now you can have a new YouTube channel on somebody who's completely synthesized, it's AI generated, who can start exploring a new niche that nobody else thought of thinking about. And their audience will be 1,000 people, 500 people, but that content can be produced for them. So I imagine that kind of information monopolies or influence monopolies will be divided down into different niches. And I imagine also for someone like you who will continue to do this, there's new avenues, right? So you can have your own avatar who you might synthesize for parts of your content. Or if you're like, I don't want to do that, I just want to create authentic content, which is filmed in studio with me and a guest, then that becomes your benchmark. But you know where you will be using AI if you aren't already? On the production side.
Sure.
Right? Because it isn't only on the content side, it's also in the production side. So all of a sudden, someone like you or I run a global business. We are a small team. We use loads of AI tools and we have so much impact in a way that just perfect forebear to that was the internet. I couldn't do what I do and have as much impact as I have without the internet. And the same for you. You have a digital business. You're literally a digital content creator. And the same will be true for AI tools in your business. But you got to have the right mindset. And if you don't adopt, your competitors will. So it's more that the model is mixed autonomy. And rather than AI taking your job, somebody using AI will take your job.
I think I'm going to have to tell the audience, like, I'm real, by the way. I'm a real one. I'm not AI or whatever. And all the other ones that are AI will be saying they're real as well and that they're filming in a real studio. And the thing is, they can produce an infinite number of those AI ones who look a bit like me, but better looking and with a slightly nicer voice and who's much smarter and faster and who has incredible guests that no one knows are not AI either. Like, we could be AI now. They wouldn't know.
I know.
This is the big reveal, isn't it?
The big reveal. I wrote a book about it. That's one of the most interesting. I was the first to write a book on like the societal ramifications on AI generated content. And the really interesting story for the genesis of this book is, so it's called Deepfakes. And it came out a few years ago, and I'm sure these topics will continue to get more important and relevant. But one of the main things I talked about in my book was the value of information integrity and how so this whole digital ecosystem which we've created is fairly nascent, it's new, but we're all already a part of it. And you don't really have a choice not to be a part of it. You know, whether you're an individual, whether you're an organization or company, you're a nation state, you have to exist in the digital world. And over the past decade, we've already seen how corrupt that information ecosystem has become. So one of the big risks when it comes to AI-generated content at scale and also AI-generated data is just like, because there's going to be so much of everything. It's like, how do you know what's authentic, what's not? How do you even get through the floods of information, all the stuff that's going to be coming at you? And increasingly, there's a view that the only way to do that is through an approach known as like content authenticity and provenance, which is basically you cryptographically seal content at the point of creation, so you have something in the DNA of the content that shows that it's not synthetically generated. And then you have an open standard on the internet, so it's more sophisticated than a watermark, but think about it as a watermark that can't be edited.
Surely can be faked.
Well, it's very hard to do if it's cryptographically.
Really?
Yeah, of course you can break cryptography. And this is where you're like, oh, well, if you go into quantum, when you see like quantum computing, that's obviously what could happen. But then if, then all cyber systems and all banks, but the premise is that it's still really hard to do. And then you create like an open standard for the internet where you can see the credentials of that content, whether it's synthetic or authentic. Because it's not that all AI-made content is going to be bad, right? It's just more transparency.
That watermark can save my career. Like, I didn't know about that. That having that watermark, being able to, because you're right, that becomes in a world of infinite deep fake YouTubers. And for people, I reckon a lot of people will be listening on the audio podcast or watching this, and they won't have seen what obviously you've seen a lot of, and I've seen now like entire news channels full of news reporters, none of whom are real.
Yeah.
And like going off into different countries, walking around, well, the answer to that, Jonathan, is, and it's like, these are not real people. They look 100% real. And a YouTuber could easily, I mean, there are YouTubers already that are fake synthetic ones, but if there is some sort of watermark saying, yeah, but these are the OGs, these are the originals, that authenticity is something that at least gives you something.
Yeah. And it's not even that you can have entirely synthetic personas, but you can also have lots of content that's synthetic of a real persona, right? So like we've seen how in China already, for instance, real influencers are using synthetic versions of themselves in e-commerce where they're just like selling products 24/7.
And so does that mean, because part of I initially went to like, there were a lot of YouTubers who don't use their real identity because they talk about difficult things or whatever, and it's just like a black screen or a fake thing. Does that mean just like it's giving a face to the voice they're doing, or does it mean that they talk a lot and then the computer goes, okay, that's who you are, I'm going to make an AI version of you?
You can do both.
Okay.
So you can either have like your own synthetic avatar. Let's say you don't want to reveal your face or your voice. So you can have a synthetic avatar, a synthetic voice. Or you could train, and I've been doing this, by the way, I've been trying it out. Because I've been traveling so much and I haven't been able to write a lot. And I really feel bad because I want to share my thoughts with my community. And but just to sit down every week and spend like 4 or 5 hours writing a newsletter, I just haven't had the time recently. So I've trained a ChatGPT agent on my writing, right? So it kind of, and I was working with it to be like, let's give my style a name. Let's come up with a character. What's my style? And we kind of worked together a bit. And I was like, okay, not too bad. And now I'm going to give you these 3 things that I want to talk about this week. And this is what I think is important. Draft a newsletter for me. And it was like not there yet. It wasn't good enough, right? But eventually it will be, where you can have something in your style based on your entire corpus of work that it understands what you sound like, what you look like, what's important to you. And you could give it 1 or 2 bullets and I want to talk about this, this, and this, and it can do that for you. And there's no reason why you can already do that with text because that's the most basic kind of digital output, right? And we've already kind of mastered text with large language models. But when you think about these foundational models, the way that they're going is into multimodal. And all that really means is that they can work with all kinds of digital information. So images, audio, video, text. So ultimately, you should be able to say, look, you know what my studio looks like. You know what, like, so let's say you want to do a conversation with, I don't know, Steve Jobs, and you got permission from his estate, because that would be the critical thing, right?
Yes.
There is a point in the not too distant future where you should be able to do that just using AI, and the whole video would be a piece of basically software generation.